And now we're on to blocking. So breaking down the key poses by adding the in-betweens, and for movements that can't be simply splined, by changing the interpolation. So for this, the down and the up position will be our blocking poses. So let's start with a down on frame 4. You can see that the bent leg now takes the weight, and the pelvis, body, and head are lower. So back into Houdini on frame 4. The hips can be rotated a bit backwards, so the pelvis can be slightly tilted up, just ever so slightly. I'm going to put a rotate Z of 6, super slight. And it can be rotated down, the pelvis can be rotated down towards the leg that's about to be passing. So we can change the rotate Y to be 0.5. So you want to move the hips down and over to the foot that's about to take the weight. So let's change these values. We have TX is 0.015. Translate Y is negative 0.025. And TZ is 0.015 for me. But of course, again, you can eyeball that yourself. Then you want to pose the front foot. So we want to plant the foot back onto the ground. So the heel we can set to 0. And let's move the ankle back. And I'm going to put a round value of 0.13. But again, this doesn't matter. We're going to be changing this later so that the foot is planted on the ground. Now we can move the back foot. It should be in contact with the ground, pushing off. So we're going to move it backwards and upwards, back and up. And then we're going to move, rotate the heel down. So the foot ankle, translate Z. We're going to do minus 0.19. And the translate Y, we'll put 0.057. And then take the heel and we're going to rotate this down so that the rotate X is at 15 for me. And finally, we're also going to modify the football control, which is the circle wires in there. And we're going to angle that down a bit as well in the rotate X, just to give us a bit more freedom in the heel. And I'm going to put that to 30. All right, so this is our down pose, and we can key everything, select everything and key it. And we're gonna invert this position between frame 13 and 19, which is at 16. So first we have to, once again, save it to the animation catalog. So we've got our curve selected. We can right click, capture pose. I deselected all of them. Let me just set up the viewport so that it takes a nice thumbnail. And I'm going to call this 04 down. Save. Now we can apply that at frame 16 by clicking on our down, select controls, and apply. And once again, just be cautious of the cog. Check where your frame 4 and frame 16 both are. And yes, our cog is acting up again. So let's just go to the previous frame. Let's see. Let's just change this to 0.015 for consistency, and we'll check back later on where we actually want that to be. But for now, we've applied the pose. It's exactly applied. And now all we need to do is mirror it. So select your controls at 16, actions, mirror with default. And now it is perfectly mirrored on the other side. All right, let's incremental save this. So save as, I'm going to call this 4, V4 down, accept. Next, we'll do the up position, which is, so this is the down, this is the up at frame 10. So basically the foot is pushing off, lifting the pelvis and body to its highest position, and the other leg is thrown out in front. So at frame 10, we want to straighten the hips out in the X. So we want them to be relatively straight. So I will not TX, RX, set that to 0. And then the grounded leg, let's pose it. We will move it backwards a bit. I will do minus 0.05. And the football, so let's change that to be rotated forward just a bit. I'm going to do RX is 4. And then we'll pose the front foot, well, the foot that's about to be in front, and we want it to be moved out in front. So I'll change that to 0.07. And then we will change the heel just to be slightly higher than it was before in the rotate X. So let's change that to a value of 9. And now we can move the cog up so that the leg is as high, so that the body is as high as it can be without overextending the leg again. So let's move that up. Basically, I'll put to 0.019 in the translate Y. And that looks good to me for the up pose. So let's select all of our controls, hit K. And then once again, we want to reverse everything on the other side at frame 22. So for frame 10, we want to capture the pose. So bring up your capture pose library again. Make sure your controls are all selected and right click capture pose. Let's just set up our viewport so that we can take a nice thumbnail. Call it anything you want, but I'm putting 10 up. And then save. And one thing you also want to do is save your animation catalog. I forgot to do this earlier. So let's save our animation catalog and just call it anim catalog in the geo folder here and hit accept. So just in case our Houdini crashes, we've got everything that we have done so far. All right, and now we have that pose saved in our library. Let's go to frame 22 and apply it. So this is the up on the other side. So at frame 22, we will click on this up pose, select controls, and hit apply. And again, our cog, let's fix that by just manually changing it back to 0.015. And now you can see if you flip between 10 and 22, our pose is perfectly applied. Let's select everything, right click in the viewport, go to actions and mirror with default. And now if you flip between the two, you can see that they are perfectly mirrored. All right. So now if you play through, you kind of get a better sense of this walk that you've created. Great. All right. So let's incremental save this file as well. V5 up. All right. So the next step in the process of animating is splining, which is using the animation editor to modify the interpolation to smooth out the movement between poses and clean up your curves. So we're going to start with the major controllers, working one channel at a time. And you don't need to use only spline functions for the tangents. Any interpolation type will do. I personally like to use bezier. So that's what we will do now. So first of all, let's set Actually, let's save our file again to a different, just in case we save as we go. Let's save this and call it v6 spline, so we don't overwrite any old files. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change my interpolation type default function by going to Edit, Preferences, Animation. And this is what we're changing, which we changed at the beginning or made sure was at constant at the beginning. Now we want to move it back to Bezier. I want all of everything that I add from now on, I want it to be Bezier curves. I'm done working in steps mode. So now we can change the function types of the existing keys that we've got. And first of all, let's just change that on our movement forwards and backwards, which is on the cog and the pole vectors and on the layout. I want it to be a linear movement for those. So let's expand this. And I want to be on the static animation layer because that's where we have the animation on our layout control. And let's Control A in the viewport, sorry, not the viewport, in the animation editor, and hit F to frame. Now we can see where our keys are. So with those curves all selected, let's change the function to linear. All right, so now it's moving linearly backwards. What we also want to do is, this is a walk cycle. So before and after infinity, or before and after our frame range, we want it to continue in the direction it was going before. So to change the extrapolation type, we can right click over the channels, go to extrapolation, slope. All right, and now if we look before and after, it's continuing in the same way it was. So let's do the same thing to the cog and poles. Let's go to the cog and pole vectors. Let's select those. And let's Control A in the animation editor, hit F, just because I like to see what's happening. And let's change those to linear as well. And then again, we'll set the extrapolation type to slope. All right, so now they are moving forwards at the same rate that the layout control is moving backwards. And you will notice that the ankles are moving backwards, and then they're fine at frame 25. And this is because when we were working in stepped mode at frame 25, the layout was backwards, was set at negative 0.6, and we fixed our ankles on the base animation to account for that. We added the cycle length to the translate Z. So our first and last keys are good on our ankles. But we want it to be looking normal. We want it to be, for example, for the left foot, we want it to be planted on the ground from 1 to 16 to the down pose, and then moving forward, and then landing here. So we can modify our keys to do that. But first of all, on our base animation layer, let's select everything. Actually, let's select everything. Turn on upper body as well. Might as well. And then select our curves, and select our curves in the animation editor by Control A again. I like to hit frame, and change these to Bezier. And before you click off, or if you do, just hit Control A again. To make our lives easier when we're editing these curves, let's change all of our selected slopes to automatic. And this will change a couple of the curves, but specifically, for example, let's see this foot heel. It changed from easing into these positions to being smoother, like following the line a bit better. So instead of having to change those manually, we just set it to automatic and it automatically did that for us, which is really nice. Okay, so let's go back to our ankles and fix those up. So look at the Translate Z by clicking on the channel and Control A in the animation editor and hit F, and you can see the line here. It's a little crazy. We know that at at frame 1, it's at 0.19, and that's good. And at frame 25, it's at 0.79, which is good. So in between that, we want it to be planted until 16. So if you remember from earlier, I said that you can change all the keys values at once by selecting them and changing value here. So let's make those all equal to 0.19. And then let's just remove the keyframes here before frame 25. So now it's easing into the frame 25. So the effect that has is now it's planted on the ground and then moving forward. It is floating a little too much, in my opinion, at the beginning and the end. So how we can fix that is just by changing these handles, the tangent handles. So select that and drag it in, Control click and drag, and Control click and drag that one too. Nice. And let's do the same thing to the Translate Z on the right ankle. For this one though, we want it to be planted from frame 13 to 25 to 4. That is the down position. So at frame 13 to 25, we want it to be at 0.48. So let's modify that value down here. And from the beginning to the down, I also want that to be consistent. So let's change this to be the same value as this, which is minus 0.12. So minus 0.12 for that one. And then I'm going to, again, just delete the keys in between and modify these tangents as well, so it's not floating as much. Okay, so now we roughly have it moving in a way that makes sense. And for this extrapolation type, for the Translate Z values, since it is moving up and forwards, we want to cycle it with offset. Go to extrapolation, cycle with offset, because if I turn off this static animation layer, I want it to move forward. I don't want it to cycle back. Like, I don't want these ankles to cycle back to the beginning. I want them to keep moving forward. So that's why we did the extrapolation type. And let's also change that to extrapolate cycle offset on the other ankle, the left ankle. And if you move further out, you can see that they're continuing. We need to set the other curves to cycle. And we will get to that shortly. Maybe we can make our lives easier by just doing that right away. Let's extrapolation cycle. And because we did that, we might have to go in and change this back to, we have to change this here back to cycle with offset. There, and do it to the other ankle as well on the Translate Y. Okay, now if we move beyond, we can see that everything is cycling and the ankles are cycling with offset. So that's great. All right. I want it to cycle on origin still. I'm still working on it. So let's turn that layer back on. And now we're cycling over origin again. One more thing that I want to change, I think with this, with the left foot ankle, the translate Z, if we notice the difference between 1 and 13, the feet are slightly more forward, slightly different. So I'm just going to fix that by making the left ankle just 0.01 backwards, because that is what the right foot ankle is. So I'm just going to make it perfectly mirrored by modifying these values to be value of 0.18. And then also need to change this to 0.78. And now you can see at frame 13, frame 1, it's exactly mirrored. So that just happened because we were modifying our keys, and now we just touched it up a bit. All right, so I'm going to save. So let's go through and clean up our curves. Let's look at our cog. And first I'm going to look at the translate X. So let's click on translate X, Control A, F in the animation editor. And for the cog, the translate X, which is the movement from side to side, I want my extremes to be at 7, which is the passing pose, and 19, which is the passing pose on the other side. So I know that's where I want my extremes. So I'm just going to delete the keys in between by selecting them and hitting the delete button so that I can make a nice smooth cycle. These keys at 1 and 25, I can keep them, but let's smooth out the movement, the interpolation in between, by changing these tangents. All right, and now let's look at translate Y. It's got a different cycle. I mean, it's the same, but it's cycling twice in one, and that's because it's the up and down, and it's moving down on the down, up on the up, and there are 2 downs and 2 ups in one complete walk cycle. So I want the extremes to be at 4, at 10, at 16, and at 22. And so I can just delete all of the other keys that are kind of noise in the middle. And again, just modify these tangents to smooth out this curve on the 1 and the 25. Next up is the TZ. And I want to take a look. So the TZ is the forward movement. And I want it to be the most forward at 4 and at 16, which are both of the downs. And I actually want, because it's between 4 and 16, the middle point between that would be the 10. And so I want that one to be my 0 value. So I'm going to change that to 0 and just delete the keys. Oh, that was 16. Delete the other keys. And I can even delete the keys at 1 and 25, because for a cycle, I only need one extreme, the next, and then the repeat of the first extreme in order for the graph to complete the rest of the cycle. So all I need is an up, a down, and an up. So since I have that, now I have it cycling perfectly, and you can double check that that's working by, again, flipping between 1 and 25, and it is still matching. So that worked out great. So that forward movement, let's just see what it looks like. I do think it's moving forward and backwards a little bit too strongly. So if I want to scale down that effect, I can select my curves, I can select my keys, and use the box handle. Because it is at 0 at this point, I can just scale it down like that. I'm going to scale it down to, watch out that you don't fully move it. Scale it down to about like 0.08. Yeah, that looks better. Okay. Next, let's look at the pelvis. So the translate X, we remember we moved it down at the beginning to minus 0.034. And we want to keep that consistent throughout. I think when we were mirroring, it kind of added some rounding errors here. So these are pretty negligible. We can just delete those and keep it at minus 0.034. Same thing seemed to happen with the other translate. So just select these in the second half and delete it. So now it's back to 0 for the translate Y and translate Z. And for the rotates, let's look at those a bit closer. We want the extremes for the rotate X to be at 4. So rotate X being this side to side swaying. Want it to be at 4, that's the down position, and at 16, so the other one. This value at 16, the mirroring made it slightly different. Let's just fix that up. I know it wants to be 8 because our value at 4 is minus 8. So I just changed that to 8, and then I'll remove the rest of the keys in between to smooth out the movement. Just by selecting them and hitting delete. And then you can delete the points at 1 and 25. And now you'll see that our cycle is incomplete. We need the down, the up, and the down. So what I can do is I can select the key at 4, copy, so Control C, and go one full cycle length later, which is 28, because 4 plus our cycle length of 24 is 28, and Control V to paste that key. So now it is cycling. Our rotate Y, let's take a look at that. The rotate Y is this up and down rotation. And I want these extremes to be at the passing pose, because that's where the hip is the most up on one side and the other. So I can just remove these frames in between and then smooth out this curve right here. And it isn't totally smoothed out just by moving the tangent handle. The tangent handle. We can control drag down and just visually place that where it looks like the most smooth point. And that looks good to me. And then finally we have the RZ. And the RZ, the first thing we did was we set it to 6.5 and then we set it to 6. So I actually want it to be at 6 at frame 4. This is the just the slight tilt in the pelvis. At frame 4 and frame 16, I want it to be at 6. There was some mirroring rounding errors, so let me just clean that up and put it to 16. And then in the middle, in between these, I'll put it back to 6.5. So that midpoint is at 10. So I'm going to delete the keys around it. And then I'll just keep these keys that I need for the cycle and delete the rest. And now it's cycling nicely. Okay, let's clean up our football next. Let's just take a look. We just have keys on the rotate X. And let's make this a little bit more seamless here. We're looking at this like ankle movement rotation here. So I can pretty much just delete this key right here. I want it to be a little bit more smoother in between. So I'll delete that and then go to the other side, the right. And instead of deleting it, because it is on the first and last frame, I'll make my life easier by just smoothing out this tangent and control clicking and dragging that upwards. So it's almost like I delete it because I'm smoothing out that movement in between. And that looks good to me. And now if you play it through, if you slow down here and look at this orthographic view, you can see that the toe is kind of penetrating through the floor. And we don't want that. So we can counter by just moving the rotation up, this football rotation control, which is just the circle. And we can change this rotate X value. And the value that I'm going to put is -3. And I lost my key here. It was at 0. So I have it at 0, and then I keyed at 15 just because that's where it was the most problematic. And then at 16, it's fine. So I just have the -3 key at 15 now. I'm going to key everything. And then I'll do the same on the other side, which is the right football rotation control. And this will be here. I'm just going to K to key that there. And the problem area is from right here. From at frame 3, it goes through the floor the most. So let's rotate that up to -3. And we already have the key there at 1. So that is good. Okay, and then if you haven't noticed, this ankle is slightly above the ground. And it's not because we have a translate Y value. It's because our heel rotation, the heel pivot point is just outside of the geometry. So when we rotate, the heel is not staying exactly on the ground. So we can just tweak that, help ourselves by translating the ankles down on the contact pose, just by -0.01. And now we can see it's more grounded on the ground. So of course, because that's on frame 1, we have to do that on frame 25 as well. So let's change that to -0.01. And then the same on the other side on the contact pose, which is at frame 13. So on our right foot ankle, let's change our TY to -0.01 as well. All right. And that is almost pretty much it for our legs. The only thing left is the knee popping, but let's come back to that later. We'll revisit that in our refining stage. So let's just save. But maybe first let's take a look at the flipbook. I don't think we've touched on that yet. So Flipbook, if you're familiar with Maya, is like Playblast. It's just a quick render out of your viewport to see properly with the proper FPS what your animation looks like. So that button is down here, Render Flipbook. And you can just click Start. If you want to change any settings here, you can. But I just click Start. And I did zoom out in my perspective view because it does add, it takes it from this angle. And this is a good way to see if your animation is looking good because it's a cycle and we've got the same frames on 1 and 25. If you want to properly cycle it, you can just change that down to 24 and now it will cycle perfectly. And this is just useful because playing back in your timeline might not be super accurate just because it depends on your workstation and its capabilities. So this is a good way to just make sure that you're seeing the proper timing of your animation. And that looks good to me so far. So let's save this file and take a look at what comes next. So the next step is refining. And in this step, we can just fine tune any missing breakdowns or poses, add offsets, and add small details to bring it to life, just further implementing the 12 principles of animation. For us, of course, we have not done the arms yet. We haven't done the upper body at all. So in this step, let's add our upper body movement. So I'm just going to save this to a new file just to start from there. 7, refine. So like before, let's turn off our masters, and I'm actually going to add our lower body to a selection set. Just by selecting my curves and my cog and adding them to a new selection set, calling it lower body, and turning those off. So now I'm just working with my upper body controls. So the first thing is the chest. We want it to be slightly tilted down on the down position and slightly tilted up on the up position. So let's implement that now. Basically on frame 4 and 16, which is our downs, we want it to be tilted down. So take the rotate Z and rotate that. I'm going to put it to 2. And since that's our only key on our chest so far, we can just go straight to frame 16 and key that there as well. Then in between, at the up pose at frame 10, let's just change that to -2. And now you can see we've got it cycling perfectly already because we do have the 2 extremes and 1 in between. All right, so now we've got the chest moving up and down, or rotating up and down. Next, let's do some more refining on the down position. So we want to rotate the chest down towards the supporting leg, which would be the rotate Y. And I'm going to put a -3 there. The upper spine counterbalances the movement of the pelvis. And the pelvis right now is rotated to the right. So we're going to rotate X to the left. And I'm going to put a value of 6 there. All right, and for our RX and RY, we already did our RZ. Let's fix this cycle by selecting our keys on frame 4 and copying them to frame 28 to complete the cycle. And on frame 16, I want to make sure that I have the opposite of these keys. So take your RY and RX, and let's actually just copy the keys to frame 16 as well. But then we can just go in and put minus sign and take out the minus sign of the RY. And now we have it moving opposite. All right. So the chest is done. Now we can put our movement in the arms. And we can add our arms to an animation layer if we want to work more with some layers. So let's do that for an example. So select your arm controls and go to the animation layers and hit this create layer from selected controls. Let's call that arms. And so for our arms, they're widest at the down position. So let's go to our down again at frame 4. We want the arms to be at their widest. And we want to rotate the shoulder forward when that side's leg is back. and then the shoulder back when that side leg is forward. So for this left side, let's make the shoulder back using rotate Y. And I'm going to put a value of 50 here. And let's make the arm not too far away from the body by using rotate Z. It's a little too much. Rotate Z, let's put negative 25. Okay, and then for the right shoulder, we want to swing forward. So rotate Y of minus 40. We'll rotate in with rotate Z of minus 35. And we'll also rotate X just by a value of 30, just to rotate it in like that as well. All right. And then for the elbows, we want to rotate the elbow in when the arm is forward and straighten it when the arm is back. So we'll straighten this using rotate Y, and I'll set a value of 15. And I'll do the opposite on the other side. On the right side, let's do RY is minus 15. And then you guessed it, let's move the wrist, rotate Y backwards as well. When that foot is forward. So on the down, we want the rotate Y of the wrist to be 15. And on the right side wrist, let's do minus 15. So it's just rotated forward like this. Okay. And now let's rotate this wrist inwards a little bit using rotate X. No, let's rotate Z. Yes, we want to rotate it inwards. And just when the arm is forward. So we'll do that ever so slightly with the RZ of minus 5. All right, let's just key everything. Select and select, and same on the other side, shift select and hit K. And let's copy the keys to frame. Let's just Control A in the animation editor, hit F, Control C. Let's go to frame 16, which will be the midpoint, and just Control V there. And then we'll also Control V at frame 28. So at frame 16, we want this to be mirrored. So let's take these controls that already are selected, and let's right click in the viewport, Actions, Mirror with Default. And now it has mirrored these poses, which is great. One thing is that because it's on an animation layer, we have to reset the extrapolation and change that to cycle. Oh, I guess I undid that. Whoops. Okay, we have to go back. Actions, mirror with default, unclick. There. All right, now it's cycling. Perfect. So then we have the head, and the head is kind of moving along with the chest, but we can counter animate that at the extremes so that it's facing forward. So it's rotating with the chest. So let's move it back in the rotate X, just by checking our front view and straightening it out. Oh, and we have to be on the base animation layer. I was still on the arms. So let's move back and just modify that rotation. And you can just make that a -6. And then let's change the rotate Y just to be a little bit more straightened out as well. And let's change our rotate Y to 2. All right, and then the same thing as before. Let's key everything. And then at frame 28, let's copy these keys and paste them. And then at frame 16, we want it to be mirrored. And just set these values. It's literally just 2 values. So let's just do that ourselves. -6 becomes 6 and 2 becomes -2. And now it's cycling nicely. Okay, let's save our file. And now let's make sure that we've applied the principles of animation. We want to make sure we have arcs, squash and stretch, overlapping action. So let's start by adding some drag on the toes. So let's open up our lower body controls again. And when I say drag on the toes, I really want my heel to be the driver. So I want the toes to be a little bit more floppy. And so I want them to be overlapping a little bit, showing a little bit of drag. So on the left football rotate control, let me see, I want it to be settled at 6. So let's key at 6, just hit K. And I want it to be kind of rotated up in the rotate X at frame 1. So let's change that to -8 at frame 1. And I still want it to be rotated up at frame 3. So let's just change that also to -8. And then it kind of immediately flattens down at 4. So let's just delete that key at 4 by just hitting delete, or of course you can be in your animation editor and selecting keys and modifying those in there. And then because we changed the value at 1, we also have to change it at 25. So let's change that to be -8 for proper cycling. And then let's see, at the passing, here at 19, I want it to be rotated down a bit. So let's rotate down in the rotate X. I'm going to just do a value of 6. And then on the up, let's rotate it down a bit to, let's do it to rotation of 10. And now it's just going to be a little bit more floppy and overlapping a bit more. So let's apply that on the other side as well. So the right football rotation, let's make it at -8, rotate X at frame 13, so at the contact. And then the same as the other side, we put the same value 2 frames later. So at frame 15, let's put -8 as well. And then let's key it at 18. That's where we want it to settle. So then in between that, frame 16, we can delete. And we are just making sure that it flops back down a little bit after the rest of the ankle finishes its movement. So then let's look at the passing of that side. At frame 7, let's put the, we want it to be slightly rotated down as well on this side. So take the rotate X and give it a value of about 6 at frame 7. And then at frame 10, let's rotate it down even more. Let's give it a value of 10. And now this side is doing the flopping as well. So that's good. Okay, for more overlapping action, let's look back at the arms. The arms, if you remember, we just had them set at their extremes at the down positions. And that's great, but we want to have some overlapping action there. So let's select our shoulders and view this in the animation editor. And let's just offset them by 1. Let's just click and drag them over by 1. Control click and drag them over just by 1 frame. let's take the elbows now and do the same thing, but let's offset them by even more. Let's control click drag them 4 frames to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now it's landing at 8. And finally, let's drag the hands by selecting the wrists, Control A to select everything, and shift them to the right 6 frames. So now they're landing at 10. You can see this effect now. They're kind of swinging a little bit more freely. There's a bit more flexibility there. Okay, save that. And now let's add some more drag to the fingers maybe. So if we select these curves, select, and let's add these to an animation layer. Let's add them to the arms animation layer. Add selected controls. And now we're looking at the right side right now. So at the down position at 4, let's rotate them in or up using the rotate Z, and let's key that there. I still have the right hand control selected, and I am keying those. We will offset those later. And then at frame 16, we want it to be opposite. So let's take the rotate Z and put it in the opposite direction. Now we can take these keys at frame 4 and copy paste them to frame 13, because right before the switch, we want it to be still in this, sorry, make sure that you're copy pasting within while you're still hovering over the animation editor. I want this position to be maintained until it starts swinging back. All right. And so now we can copy the frames from frame 16. Sorry, let's key everything on frame 16. There we go. And now copy these keys to frame 25 for a proper cycle. Same on frame 21. Let's copy those keys. And now if you look, these this curve upwards is landing at the down, but I actually want some more overlap. Some overlapping action. So let's select all of our keys and shift everything over by 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And now as it moves upwards and back, the fingers are more flowing and bending with the movement. All right. So now on the left side, we just need to offset these keys. Right now they're moving in the same way as the other, but let's just select these keys in the animation editor and move the frames over by 12 frames. So that will make sure that that will make it so that our keys that are now at 5 are now at 17 instead. So just the opposite. And there we go. Now we've got some drag on the fingers. We do want to make this cycle. Again, we have to change the extrapolation type to cycle just by right-clicking over the channel. And there we go. Now we're cycling. Perfect. Let's add a bit of bounce with our head. By making it lower on the down position. So let's just go make sure you're back in your base animation layer. And then on the down position, let's just translate it down. So this is the X axis, so just be aware of that. And then let's go to the other down, copy this value from the translate X at 4, and at 16, let's copy paste that value. Now in between at the ups, let's just make it higher by putting the same value but opposite. So remove that negative sign. And if you just delete this extra key we have at the end there, now it's going to be cycling perfectly. So now we have a bit more of a head bob. And you can check your flipbook again for proper timing. Let's just save our file and give it a nice clear angle here and flipbook. Great. All right. And now the only thing left is adding further refinements or details, changes, but also fixing the knee pops. So let's take a look back at the knees. So let's look at the left side first. Basically with knees, you want to make sure that they're not popping out drastically compared to the rest of the frames around it. And in this one, you can see it's popping a bit from here to here. So what I can do to try to fix that is maybe at this frame, at frame 1, I'm gonna change the ankle to be a bit more straightened out by rotating it down. Honestly, let me key at frame 2 and make that change at frame 1. Sorry, not straightened out, a bit more bent. Just to try to match a bit more what's going on in the following frame. So honestly, this process of fixing your knee popping is a process that's just kind of frame by frame, keyframing your controls in a way that helps you remove some of the pops. It's kind of tedious. Some rigs have a control on it that will allow you to stretch the leg, and shorten the leg, which can help. This one has an IK stretch, but it really only helps you to elongate the leg until the foot touches the ground. So since the foot is already touching the ground here, it's not going to help us in this situation. So we can modify our ankles, our heel rotations, even our hips rotations to kind of straighten out and bend the knees as needed. But just be aware that this is adding extra keyframes and kind of messing with your clean curves. So just be careful of what changes you're making and how they affect the rest of the rig. But really it is just eyeballing it and working with the controls that you have to try to fix the knee pops. So go at your own rate and look for knee popping and modify those controls that you have to try to fix it. So here I'm just going to rotate down the heel, and that seemed to fix that one actually pretty well. Let's do the same thing on the other side. My view is blocked. Let's go to left viewport. And just zoom in on this ankle and select the heel. So there's the pop, and I'm going to rotate this down there to kind of smooth it out, and that looks better to me. Okay, let's go back to the right viewport and keep looking at our left foot here. So we just want to be careful of when the leg extends backwards. and bumps forward. So from here to here, we've got a big change in the knee. The knee is bent a lot. So let's actually go to our ankle. And what we had done before was on our translate Z, we modified this tangent. Let's change it, move it a little bit further back by just extending this tangent outwards. And that'll help ease into that knee. Still popping a little. Let's fix that by pushing it out even more. Okay, it's a bit more gradual. And let's check on this side. Okay. Let's do the same on the other side on the ankle here. On the right side, which is going to be around frame 4. And our hand is in the way. Let's go to the left view. So there, the knee is popping in pretty quick. Let's take the translate Z of this and just extend it a bit so it's slightly further back at that moment. Maybe that was too much. Okay, it's a bit more gradual, so that's nice. And I'm just going to play through just to see. All right, I would say knee pops are pretty much fixed. So let's save that file. And now I invite you to use animation layers to add some more fun to your animation. You can try angling the ankles more outwards. You can add your ankles to a new layer and make them angle like this. You know, you can really have fun and add some personality to your character in different ways. You can change around like how the head is kind of rotating. And I would suggest doing this on animation layers just in case. But another fun thing you can do is if you turn on your face controls, you can see there are some antenna controls, and I would invite you to try playing around with drag and animate these antennas on a layer to bounce along with your steps. You can make a play blast of this final movement that you've got and keep working on this little robot animation that you've created. Set this to cycle at 24, and there you go. You've got a cute little robot animation. And if you want to make your animation move forward, which is something that we set up at the beginning, you can always turn off this static layer, and now your little dude, your little Harry, will move forward. If you extend your timeline even, because we set everything to cycle perfectly, now he's just going to continue on moving forward out of frame and onwards forever until, whatever point you set your global end frame to be. So yeah, that was Introduction to Animation, first steps in animating, and thank you for joining me.